Hey guys, Kelade here. So let's chat about some of the new updates that Blizzard has given out for Shadowlands. Obviously, the expansion has also been delayed. There's also been a couple of warrior changes. So let's chat about all of them now, right? Better late than never, some of those other changes. But first, if you guys haven't heard, right, Shadowlands was delayed. It was delayed last week. They haven't given us a date. Now, this post does say later this year, but that's going to be kind of weird because realistically, it's not just going to be a delay for, a couple of weeks. So at best, I think the expansion launches the first or second week of December. If not, then I feel like they should just push it back to the year afterwards, because it doesn't really make sense to launch it and then I guess have an extended period of time where potentially the raid's not out. You obviously don't want raid to be out during the holidays or the expansion in that case, but we'll see. Maybe they'll change it up this year. I think generally they have not. So that way people can kind of like spend time with their families instead of raiding. The thing, however, is we do know that they are going to be doing the pre-patch on October 13th. That'll be exciting, but basically, I mean, the biggest way that this will impact you guys is that your corruption stuff is not going to work anymore, right? So we'll kind of see how that works out. Back to like the actual updates, right? So they've highlighted a couple of things today. I think this is probably in response to that update, like, hey, we're delaying Shadowlands. This is what we're working on. So one of the first things they called out was the maw. Yeah, the maw kind of sucks ass. There's really nothing you want to do in the maw. I mean, there's obviously questing that happens in the maw, but every time that I've stepped foot in the maw on the beta, it's been a horrible experience. One, you can't mount, so you're just moving super slow, right? For an area that doesn't allow you to mount, it is not dense enough, right? It's almost the same, if not more barren than quest areas like out in the wild, like the 4 different regions. So it really doesn't make sense that you cannot mount in this zone. And on top of that, there's nothing fun and it's always been buggy. I mean, that first quest when you walk into the maw and you have to like collect the souls, that's been buggy for a very long time and it's still not a good experience. So I've always hated going to the maw in the expansion. I would not mind if they really got rid of it and please just allow us to mount in the maw. So far, it is a horrible experience for anybody that goes into the maw. Next, they're talking about the conduit system. So before this, Blizzard basically made it so you can only change your conduits once per week. Now, you can change like your soulbinds, obviously, that you're connected to. But as far as for like what conduits that you're actually like putting into the slots, which right now conduits are more powerful than soulbinds. Maybe we'll see some balancing there. Like the conduit system altogether, right? Like there might be 1 or 2 soulbinds that could be strong like at the very end. But overall, I would say right now conduits matter more than the soulbinds, which is why like it's so important that they allow you to have 3 like potency and DPS conduits now for like all the trees. So that's very important. That's a good change that they made previously. But here, they're specifically talking about the reset aspect. I don't know why Blizzard keeps trying to do this mechanic where they don't want you to switch whenever, right? If we look at current systems that you have in BFA, right, of player power, other than the obvious and stuff that's already there, like your character's gear and stuff, but like what's the borrow power? Like what's BFA's power, right? You have Azerite pieces, you have essences from your necklace, and you have corruption, right? Out of all 3 of those, what's like the least to complain about thing? In my opinion, it's the essences, right? Why? Because you can get all the essences and there's no restriction in how you can change them, right? Of all 3 of those systems, essences is the only one that you can freely change, just like talents. I don't understand why Blizzard can't just accept that and use that as a way to base around like their character setup. Mainly because WoW has become a point where you really want people to be specifically focused on certain fights. And on certain fights and certain talents, right, in this case conduits, you really have certain ones that are good for single target, certain ones that are good for AoE. So you cannot restrict people to just having one thing. In this current setup, they essentially are going to give you, right, you're going to get a max of 10 conduit energies. Every day you're going to get a refresh of 1. And then whenever you learn a new conduit, you get 1. And you can store it up to 10. But to be honest, why though, right? Like, that basically means you can probably switch to something and switch back once per week, right? Because every week you're going to get 7 of that, and it's going to cost you potentially, right, 8 of these resources, these energies, to switch to 4 new ones and switch back to 4 previous ones if every single one of them has to change. This is one of those systems where I understand it happening in like mobile games where they're trying to just rake you on money, because one of the key mechanics that mobile games have is the recharge mechanic, right? Allowing you to do something that free-to-play players have to wait for. But if you pay at a premium, they'll give you recharges. And that's why people meme on the fact that like, oh, if you spend $1, you can get a Conduit, right? Obviously that's not true, but that's essentially what this system is building up to, right? Some way for players to potentially pay for a faster exchange. People are okay with this on mobile, and that's why people meme about on mobile. That's why people don't consider mobile to be like real gaming, because of stuff like this, right? This potential aspect for even a pay to win feature. And we don't want to see this shit in our PC games, Blizzard, right? This is a mobile mechanic. Get it out of here, right? Capping your players' progression and making it so they have to wait to do something just because something recharges once per day, that's insanely restricting to our players, and it doesn't really need to be in the game, right? Why restrict everybody? Especially like, I only play one type, right, for my class, right? I either play Fury or Arms, right? Imagine if I wanted to play multiple specs. Imagine if I was playing somebody like a Druid, who the biggest point, right, when people ask as a new player, oh, what class should I play, right? One of the biggest things you can tell people is that if you don't know, you can always play a hybrid, right? Imagine being a Druid, you can play a tank, you can play a melee DPS, a ranged DPS, a healer. Wow, your options are unlimited, right, in what you can be. But with this system, it doesn't even matter. You're locking people into that like specific like spec aspect. So I'm pretty sure everybody would be okay if you just made it so conduits can just be swapped in and out. And you obviously have the system in place for this to work. I mean, to be honest, it looks just like essences or glyphs, where you can just swap at whatever. Just get rid of the energy altogether. I don't know why you guys are wasting so much time on trying to balance this mechanic. Yeah, so let's just move on. And then of course there's the class and covenant balance that Blizzard has been talking about. Essentially, Blizzard last week went ahead and they looked at, I'm pretty sure basically every single class, and just nerfed the shit out of all of their OP covenants. Which in my opinion shouldn't be the way that they do it, because I'm always of the opinion that they shouldn't nerf like what's the best if the weaker ones are so weak. Essentially, we're moving towards a place where covenants are going to become potentially so weak that they're as strong as racial abilities. Now, if that's somewhere that where we get to, I mean, we get there. But why did Blizzard waste all this time balancing and trying to introduce covenants? If that's the case, you know, if covenants are going to be as strong as racial abilities, then potentially they really don't matter. They might matter to like the top like 10 guilds in the world, but outside of that, really doesn't, right? If you ask anybody right now, for example, for warriors, what race should you be? Most people are going to go, even the top end warriors are going to go play whatever you like, right? You know, don't worry about your DPS. Like, yeah, that one might have like slightly like a couple of DPS points higher, but to be honest, your random procs are going to make up for any racial differences that you might have. So if that's where they're going to go with covenants, I mean, why even bother at this point, right? Just give us the cosmetic aspect, let people pick whatever covenants you want, or just pick the best covenant and just go, bam, that's the ability you get when you're in Shadowlands, and that's the one you keep. Or warriors, just make it condemn, and we're good to go. Now, if you have any questions about like what's the best covenant right now, I haven't tested as much. Like once they come out with this, I haven't played the beta as much other than testing some trinket stuff. But most likely you're still going to use Condemn, to be honest, because it's the most versatile, right? Even if they nerf Condemn, the problem is the other three are too limited in where you can use them, right? Imagine using some of those AoE ones on single target fights. It's so pointless. That's why it's hard. They essentially basically have to nerf Condemn to like no value. And to that point, let's talk about the Condemn changes and what actually happened, right? So it's a little bit bright, but I'm too lazy to cut this out in a picture, but here it is, right? So you guys saw this thing above from when I made the previous video, right? That's the old values of what you have on the beta, right? When you don't have Covenant, your execute as arms does that much, your execute as Fury does that much, and then when you have Venthyr and you pick the Condemn, it reduces your damage at arms, but increases your damage at Fury. Now, of course, the no Covenant execute damage is physical. The Venthyr Covenant is shadow damage. On a raid boss, I think it's like 30% more damage, shadow versus physical. I think it's something like that. Obviously, point it out if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's a number. Yeah, even when you look at this, technically, like arms should be doing like very relatively similar damage, but that's not the point, right? The point is that like when you pick an ability, the number, why does it go down, right? Like why does the Covenant make it on paper look worse, right? Because in PvP settings, the armor is not the same, right? So let's look at what changed, right? So last week, Blizzard essentially buffed arms a little bit, and they nerfed Fury by a lot, right? They looked at it and go, you know what, Kelade, you're right when you said that. Why is arms having worse Condemn versus execute damage, but Fury has better? Let's just make them both worse. So there we go, right? Fury basically got nerfed by 31%, somewhere around there. It's just decimals. And then arms got buffed by around 12%. So they buffed arms a little bit, not enough, and they nerfed Fury way too much with the 31% nerf. So you can kind of see like how it shifts out now. Now when you play Fury, execute actually gets nerfed more. Now we might as well go over some of the other warrior stuff that came out. Single-minded Fury got buffed from 8% to 10%. Okay, that's fine. I mean, yeah, it's gonna be kind of weird, but if they keep buffing it, right? Potentially we might just go one-handed weapons if they keep buffing this further. I think now, to be honest, I would consider them probably even with this. I still preferred beforehand to use the two-handers for Titan's Grip because I was more used to the rage gain that I got there, and I just liked having two-handed weapons, dueling them. But yeah, if they keep making that better, and then you're gonna have to go one-handed, obviously. But I think right now it's still kind of even, but maybe we might lean towards it, especially if some weapons come out that might have crazy procs. We'll have to see. For your Frothing Berserker, that got nerfed. I don't know why. So it used to have a chance to refund 40 rage. Now it's going to refund 20 rage. I can understand Blizzard nerfing Condemn because they're lazy and they go, hey, instead of buffing the other 3, let's nerf Condemn to make all the covenants even, right? But the problem is Fury is not OP. Like Fury is just like okay, right? Especially like it's okay in like 5 target cleave, and that's really the only place that it shines in. I don't understand why they're nerfing Fury, like the base kit. It literally doesn't make sense to me. And on top of that, like I think it's like now it's probably like a month ago, there was like this weird thing that was flying around where there was supposedly like a buff for Rampage that was placed on Bloodthirst. And it was like a 30% damage increase in Rampage, but it was placed on like one of the Bloodthirst ranks, and that was removed. I don't know if that's actually the case because there was never like an official like patch notes for it. But if that was the case, it feels bad. I think after it happened, it was kind of hard to tell because the problem is when that change happened, potentially, or allegedly, is also when Blizzard made it so your gear no longer scaled in Mythic Plus. So it was hard to like compare your damage at that point with the damage numbers we have seen before. Like if you look at my older videos, if I ever showed overall damage, you can see like Rampage doing higher. So I don't know if at that point to now if my play changed or something changed, but I definitely do notice my Rampage doing significantly less damage than they were doing in Mythic Plus. I obviously can't say definitively if that's what happened, but just know that potentially a Rampage also got nerfed 30%, but that happened like a month ago. And there isn't anything official about it, so I can't just be like, this actually happened. But it definitely does feel that way. And I think a lot of people would agree with that have tested on beta. Let's see, War Machine, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what happened here is this is actually a buff because we used to have the Arms War Machine, like even when I check in game, and the Arms War Machine does auto attacks generate 10 more rage, but now the Fury one is generating 20 rage, so it's going to generate 10% more rage. That seems like a buff. I don't know if this was here the other day when this first came out, but yeah, so that's good. At least they buffed that. I don't know if that matters too much because people were not really using War Machine, but this could be huge because they're buffing the aspect of War Machine that makes it more usable in most cases, so that could be good. Now I don't really care about prot, so we'll skip over that. Who cares about prot? Now the other thing, oh, and also yeah, I think the wildhead here is confused. So like when you look at the Condemn buffs, like it's weird because it says Fury and the damage increase. It's wrong. Just like look at these numbers. These are the correct numbers and percentages that it has changed by. This is the other big thing. The legendary that does the spell reflect legendary, right? It used to reflect for 200% longer. Now it's only 60%, so way shorter duration. And instead of applying to your entire party, it only applies to your nearest ally. What does this mean? This means basically you're not going to be using this in Mythic Plus as much anymore, and it's mostly likely going to be a PvP thing. Like as long as they're going to let legendaries have their full value in PvP, you probably still use this definitely in 2v2 arena and most likely in 3v3, right? So that's where I see the value of this now. Essentially, if you thought about worrying about crafting this legendary in week 1 so you can do Mythic Plus better, worry no longer because it's nerfed to not be as OP anymore. I mean, it's still good. Really, it's not necessary because Spell Reflect for yourself is enough. And most likely the other melee that you have is like a Demon Hunter or Rogue or DK or Pally and they all have immunities or magic reduction of some kind, they don't need your spell reflect, right? So you're good to go crafting the whatever most OP legendary is going to be at the time of the expansion launching. And right now that's still going to be the Rampage proccing Siegebreaker one. So if you're questioning about what the best legendary is, right now it's still that. Hopefully Blizzard doesn't notice it. Blizzard, forget what you heard me say in the last 30 seconds. Don't think about it. Those are the changes that have happened, that are about to happen. Let me know what you guys think. I do feel like Blizzard is wasting too much time on like the conduits, making it like recharge system, just make it free. Covenants, really, dude, to be honest, just solve the issue. Pick the best covenant. That's the ability you all get, right? And fucking just balance classes off of those and specs out of those, because this shit is never going to be balanced in its current state. But as always, thanks for checking out the video, guys. Feel free to subscribe to see more. See ya.